The mind. When you really look into it, the mind is it was one of the, I guess you could call it, the tools or the technologies that you developed when you came into life form, not from evolution way back when. You jumped in along the way. Look at it this way: you, the creator, coming in from this side, evolution coming from this side, and you kind of joined somewhere in the middle. I'm not talking about a specific year. I'm not talking about an era of humanity. I'm just the evolution and the your being kind of merged together, and now in a biological body, you gave yourself a brain. You said, I got to have a way. I got to have a computer to function in this biological environment. I need a way to assess. I need a way to survive, to judge, to store, and then I'll give myself emotions too. The brain is a biocomputer, but it's not you. In so many ways, the mind, the brain, and again, I use these terms interchangeably, is like a big software program, a great big software program. There's a lot of programming. You see, once you perceive something, then it's retained. It's put into a program. It's put into little boxes, kind of, in your memory reservoir. And it's called upon from time to time. And much like a software program, the brain deals with zeros and ones, not literally, but meaning duality. The brain has thoughts. It has thoughts. And basically, in a thought, you're going and pulling up retained information. And those thoughts are all based in duality, every one of them. Your mind does not have, nor has ever had up to now, the ability to retain information outside of its duality programming. Whoa. The brain is very, very much like a software program, or let's put it better, software programs simply emulate a lot of the workings of the brain. And when a programmer is sitting down and writing, it's very much like the brain functions itself, how you perceive something, and then how you retain it and store it, and then how you pull it back in for later use. The big important point here is that the mind is here to protect you and guide you in this reality. It's here to pull up information about don't put your hand on a hot stove. Don't tell your wife, your partner, that she looks a little heavy today. These are all things that become very important in getting through everyday life. But within all of that, I would go so far as to say that there is no intelligence. Let's say that you eat rattlesnake for the first time. And I know to some of you that may be disgusting, but it's actually not too bad. You know, it tastes like chicken. That's qualia, see? It tastes like chicken. You're eating the rattlesnake. Your mind might be disgusted because it's thinking, it has a visual remembrance of rattlesnakes, and how could you possibly eat this? And steaks in general, you just don't like. But you take a bite of it, and say, oh, well, this is kind of like chicken. Well, that was qualia. That's how the brain operates. So the next time you have rattlesnake, then your reference, your qualia will go immediately to that. Now that's really not intelligence. That's the ability to go back, retrieve data, maybe from multiple sources, bring it together in a slightly different way, but it's just still all data from before. So that's why I say the mind really isn't that intelligent. You realize that all perceptions that come through visually, all perceptions take place in a certain part of the mind. Your eyes see something that it perceives to be outside of you, but actually it's not. Actually, everything is happening in there. There's, you could say, basically nothing happening out there other than the training that you've had to perceive things outside of you. But actually, your brain is taking data from the input from the eyes and turning it into colors and turning it into things that has size and dimension and textures and everything else, but it's not happening out there. It's all happening here in the mind machine. It's the mind is simply creating that scenario, that dream scenario of based on its visual input and some other things that have you believe that everything is happening out there. The basic purpose of the mind, the original purpose was it was a perception tool. It allowed an angelic being who'd never been in their physical form, it allowed them to perceive a 3D reality around them. It allowed the mind and the brain allowed the input from the eyes and the ears and the input from all the physical data that was coming in. It allowed it to kind of organize that data. The mind allowed the being to perceive the difference on this planet between the color blue and the color yellow. The mind allowed the being to perceive where they were in time and space, which is very important if you're going to be in this reality. The mind also allowed the being to kind of focus in this reality, never designed to be an overly tight focus, but yet to bring their energies together in this reality for the experience. So the mind served a beautiful purpose. The mind allowed a being to identify with themselves as a human with a physical body and a human name in this reality. It allowed the identity to shape. Without it, there would have been, well, you wouldn't have been able to focus in this reality. You'd have been constantly in and out, as the Lemurians had found. It was very difficult in the early days of Lemuria to stay embodied in biology and to stay focused on this 3D level. Part of this 3D reality almost pushes you out of it because it's so unnatural. It is a way of shoving you right back out, as the Lemurians found out. So with the evolution of the mind, it allowed everybody to stay grounded and centered in this reality. That was the original intent of the mind. Big point as we go forward, as we go beyond the mind. It is just a point of consciousness. That's all it is. It's not here, and it doesn't exist in time or space. It is a little facet of your overall consciousness, the I am that I am. I will just call it the most complex organism in all of creation. There's nothing like it that has the complexity of the human mind. And you say, well, if it's that complex, shouldn't it be able to then perform and do all sorts of things then? And shouldn't it be an amazing thing? No, because it's very inefficient. The original coding never really evolved in what you would call a natural or energetic evolution cycles. It never really evolved. It stayed pretty much the same. It thinks it's adapted itself to modern times, but it really hasn't. It just builds on its complexity. The mind does not dream. Does not dream. When you dream at night, it's not the mind. No, you're basically going into the beyond. You're going into these multiple levels of reality, and the mind does not dream. The mind tries to interpret what's happening. Doesn't do such a good job because one minute you're floating down a river in a canoe and the next minute you're eating cotton candy next to an elephant, and and you blame it on the pizza that you ate. It's not that. The pizza is only kind of affecting the mind coding. The mind's trying to interpret, and it doesn't do a very good job. The mind does not make decisions. Nope. The mind is not capable of making a decision. The decisions are made by you, and you're not your mind. You are so much more. The mind cannot make a decision. Now, it will bombard you. It will blast you with data, and it will pull up memories, and it will pull up its judgments, and the mind will influence you, barrage you with things, usually from a negative standpoint of, here's what happened to you last time when you did this, do you really want to do it again? Mind doesn't make decisions. Humans have given the kind of the authority for decisions to the mind, but it doesn't actually make it. The mind does not feel. It does not feel. No sense of feeling whatsoever. And you say, but yes, but I have, all these thoughts and feelings and emotions and what I like and dislike. The mind pretends that it can feel, and it's created basically false feelings called emotions. It was trying to emulate the angelic being and having the ability to have an awareness of self, but they're really false. The mind then created something called emotions, and it's just a bunch of data points. And it learned to love emotions, and it created even more emotions, because with emotions, your life gets more complex, and the mind loves complexity. Anything that involves complexity, such as emotions, trauma, drama, anxiety, any of those things, the mind loves. It gives the mind something to play with. Humans like to think that the mind is imaginative. It's not. It can imagine a little bit within the little box that it's in, but it cannot imagine itself outside of the box. The mind is not creative. Oh, Lord. It is not creative in any sense of the word. It thinks it is, because it can take this data and maybe that emotion and put them together, but it's just using parts and pieces that are already laying around. It's really not creative. It's just reassembly. You are creative. The very soul of you is highly creative. Look what you did. You created this. And now the next question is, how are you going to create going beyond it? Well, not from the mind, but from you. The mind actually really doesn't store memories, very, very short-term memories for a little bit. It's got a little tiny memory capability, but the memories aren't in here. The memories are simply part of your energy. The mind isn't the place where the memories are held, and even if there is an attempt to bring back the memories, let's say if something happened 30 years ago, the mind distorts it. It focuses on the emotion, the trauma, the pain, the negativity for the most part. There's things that it does quite well. It stays in time and space. It organizes, it prioritizes, it judges and does all these things. But the mind is really good at things like anxiety. The mind loves fighting. It loves fighting with itself, with you. Loves fighting with you. You want to tickle your mind and make it feel good. Just engage in one of these mind massacres that occur. Just battle with your mind. Oh, it loves it. Oh, it has such a good day when it's fighting with you, because it goes nowhere. The mind loves anxiety, because what happens in anxiety, you're like, what's wrong with me? And then the mind says, let me tell you. I got a list here. I've been making a list of everything that's wrong with you. So it loves the anxiety. The mind knows right now it's time for all that to change. It's been there in service to you in that kind of a fused box for so long, and it knows it's time. The software version that humans are using right now, and this is just me explaining it, don't take it literal, but humans are dealing with software version 1.99. Haven't advanced to version 2 yet. This is over the course of all human history. There's been some upgrades, minor patches along the way, some upgrades. You look at some of the major times of human development on the planet. The Renaissance period, for instance, gave it a nice upgrade. Wars will often give upgrades, so you get to the next version. The coronavirus that came over the planet in the year 2020, that created a nice upgrade. But humans are still working on version 1, upgrade number 99. They haven't come to version 2 yet. We're right at that crossroads. This is the last era of the mind. Era meaning, I give it about 30 years, which is extremely short, extremely short. New technologies make it easier to invent better technologies. Every time we have a new technology, it makes it easier to invent the next better technology. The brain does not do this. It's been pretty much the same brain with the same capacity for about 150, 200,000 years. That's why the brain will be replaced. And they're not going to cut people's heads off and, stuff a new brain in there. It'll start with implants, and it will continue with that to the point where a good part of the brain actually may be nothing but robotics, very sophisticated robotics. But it will happen. It will happen. It is definitely the last era of the mind. If you're wondering that, this brain changeover thing is a long way away, you're sitting on it right now. You're sitting on what's going to, in your iPhone, you're sitting on what's going to replace your brain. Not that Steve Jobs or Apple's going to put an iPhone in your head, but maybe there'll be new technology that comes. It's interesting, and your brain feels it. I'm going to say you're truly one of the last generations ever to have a totally organic mind. And that's beautiful and it's frightening all at the same time. Without consciousness, it's frightening. And that's why you're here. While the rest of humanity is going the way of Tekrin, integrating that into their bodies, we're doing something else, very different but very important, integrating what you would call divinity, consciousness, the I am. While they're using artificial intelligence, we're bringing in the I am. And in parallel, not in competition too, but in parallel, for balance. For balance. He chose to be here at this time to bring consciousness into this realm. A new degree of, a new level of consciousness that wasn't human limited. What you bring in is creating a balance, you could say, for all this technology that comes, a technology that will replace the human mind and body, technology that could eventually overtake the human, so to speak. It doesn't take a lot. We don't have to have hundreds of thousands or millions like you. It doesn't take a lot. Just a few who are very aware of what's going on and why they're here, and who are allowing the light. You see, with that, then, this whole meld of technology and human, of the mind and artificial intelligence, of biology and nanotechnology, then it evolves to serve rather than evolving to take over. And there's a huge difference with just a little light.